Everyone thought they knew who the real gunfighter was in 1964 Hollywood. James Coburn had just conquered the world with The Magnificent Seven, establishing himself as the technical master of Western gunplay. His precision, his discipline, his methodical approach to every draw had earned him respect from directors, stuntmen, and fellow actors alike. But on a muggy afternoon at MGM Studios, Coburn made the mistake of underestimating a man he saw as nothing more than a song and dance entertainer. What happened in the next 0.19 seconds didn't just humble a legend, it redefined what speed really meant. The Western Street backlot at MGM was buzzing with its usual controlled chaos. 3 different productions were using the sprawling frontier town set, with cast and crew members weaving between the false front buildings like extras in some grand Hollywood Western. It was October 14, 1964, and the golden age of Westerns was in full swing. James Coburn was between takes on a guest appearance for a television Western when he first noticed the rhythmic sound echoing from behind the saloon facade. Click, pause, click. Someone was practicing quick draw, and the precision of the timing caught his attention immediately. Curious, Coburn walked around the corner of the building, expecting to find another actor running through the standard Hollywood gunfighter routine. What he found instead was Sammy Davis Jr., dressed in an immaculately tailored black Western outfit, working through a series of draws with the focused intensity of a concert pianist rehearsing a difficult passage. Coburn paused in the shadows, watching. At 36, he had established himself as one of the most technically proficient actors in Hollywood when it came to Western skills. His tall, lean frame and natural athleticism made him perfect for the role of the methodical gunfighter, the man who won through precision rather than flash. He'd studied with the best instructors, mastered the authentic techniques, and prided himself on bringing real Western skills to fictional roles. But what he was watching now looked less like authentic gunfighting and more like performance art. Sammy's movements were fluid, almost dance-like in their grace. Each draw incorporated a subtle flourish, a tiny extra motion that served no practical purpose but added an aesthetic quality to the action. It was undeniably impressive to watch, but to Coburn's trained eye, it looked like exactly what he'd always suspected of entertainers who dabbled in Western skills: all style, no substance. After watching for several minutes, Coburn stepped out of the shadows. His footsteps on the wooden walkway announced his presence, and Sammy turned to face him with that $1,000,000 smile. "Mr. Coburn," Sammy said warmly, "didn't know you were working on the lot today." "Just finished a scene for Rawhide," Coburn replied, his deep voice carrying its usual measured cadence. "Heard someone practicing and thought I'd take a look." Sammy gestured to his gun belt. "Hope I wasn't disturbing anyone. Just trying to keep my technique sharp." Coburn nodded slowly, his eyes taking in the details of Sammy's equipment. The gun belt was clearly custom-made, fitted perfectly to Sammy's compact frame. The holster showed signs of extensive modification, polished metal fittings designed to eliminate friction, careful adjustments to the angle and depth. It was the equipment of someone who took this seriously, but the technique— "Mind if I make an observation?" Coburn asked, his tone friendly but carrying an edge of professional authority. "Please do." Coburn moved closer, studying Sammy's stance. "You've got real speed there, no question about it. But all those extra movements, the flourishes, in a real situation, that would get you killed. Quick draw isn't about looking good. It's about efficiency, economy of motion, getting steel on target as fast as possible with no wasted energy." Sammy's smile didn't waver, but something flickered in his eyes. "I see what you mean. Don't get me wrong," Coburn continued, warming to his subject. "What you're doing is impressive as hell to watch. It's showmanship at its finest. But when push comes to shove, when it's life or death, all that dance training goes out the window. It becomes about pure mechanics." The words hung in the air between them. Around the set, crew members had begun to notice the conversation. Word spread quickly in small communities like movie lots, and within minutes, a small crowd had gathered at a respectful distance to watch 2 Hollywood legends discuss the finer points of gunfighting. Sammy adjusted his gun belt slightly, the movement casual but deliberate. You know, James, you make a good point about efficiency. Mind if I show you something? Be my guest. What happened next was unlike anything James Coburn had experienced in his extensive career. Sammy took 3 steps backward, settling into a stance that suddenly looked nothing like the flowing, dance-inspired movements Coburn had been watching. This stance was pure function, feet positioned for maximum stability, weight balanced perfectly, right hand hanging loose but ready. You mentioned mechanics, Sammy said, his voice taking on a different quality. Gone was the entertainer's warmth, replaced by something cooler, more focused. Would you mind timing this one? Coburn pulled a stopwatch from his pocket, a tool he always carried for timing his own practice sessions. Sure thing. What's your target? Sammy pointed to a small wooden sign about 20 feet away. The S. In. Saloon. Got it. Coburn raised the stopwatch. On your mark. The transformation was complete. The man standing in front of Coburn was no longer Sammy Davis Jr., the entertainer. This was someone else entirely. Someone who had clearly spent thousands of hours perfecting something far beyond showmanship. Mark, Coburn said, what happened next violated the laws of physics as Coburn understood them. Sammy's hand moved. That was the only way to describe it, because calling it a draw implied a process, a sequence of movements that could be broken down and analyzed. But there was no process here. One moment Sammy's hand was at his side, the next moment it was filled with steel, the gun drawn, cocked, and aimed with surgical precision at the target. The sound of the hammer clicking into place echoed across the set like thunder. Coburn stared at his stopwatch in disbelief. The numbers seemed impossible. 0.19 seconds. He looked up at Sammy, who was calmly holstering his weapon with the same fluid motion he'd used to draw it. The entertainer's smile had returned, but there was something different about it now, something that acknowledged exactly what had just happened. 19/100ths of a second, Coburn said quietly, his voice filled with something approaching awe. Not bad for a dancer, right? Sammy replied, but there was no malice in his tone. Just the quiet satisfaction of a master craftsman who had just demonstrated his true capabilities. The crowd that had gathered around them was completely silent. Camera operators, grips, directors, fellow actors. Everyone stood frozen, trying to process what they'd just witnessed. In a business where special effects and camera tricks could make anything seem possible, they had just seen something that was genuinely impossible, except that it had actually happened. Coburn looked down at the stopwatch again, then back at Sammy. Jesus Christ, Sammy, where the hell did you learn to do that? Same place you learned your technique, Sammy replied. Practice. Lots and lots of practice. But the speed, that's not human speed. Sammy's smile widened. Funny thing about dance training, James. It teaches you to make your body do exactly what you tell it to do, exactly when you tell it to do it. Every muscle, every joint, every fiber working in perfect coordination. When you apply that kind of control to something like quick draw, he gestured to his holster. Well, you get what you just saw. The conversation around them gradually resumed as people began to process what they'd witnessed. But Coburn remained fixed in place, staring at Sammy with a completely new understanding of who he was dealing with. I owe you an apology, Coburn said finally. I saw the flourishes, the style, and I made assumptions about the substance underneath. No apology necessary, Sammy replied. You weren't wrong about the flourishes. When I'm performing, when I'm entertaining, I do add extra flair. But that's for the audience, not for the draw itself. The speed is separate from the showmanship. How long have you been working on this? About 8 years of serious practice. Started when I realized I was going to be doing westerns and figured I better know what I was doing. Found out I had a natural aptitude for it, so I kept pushing to see how fast I could get. Coburn shook his head slowly. 8 years. And you can draw in under 0.2 of a second. On a good day, sometimes I can hit 0.17, but that's pushing the absolute limit of what's physically possible. The implications of what Sammy was saying began to sink in. This wasn't just fast, this was record-setting fast. This was speed that would have been legendary in the actual Old West. "Sammy," Coburn said, his voice dropping to a whisper, "you realize what you just demonstrated? That's faster than most of the documented quick-draw champions from the real frontier days." "I know," Sammy replied simply. "Turns out all that training to move in perfect rhythm, to hit precise marks at precise moments, to make my body do impossible things on stage, all of that translates pretty well to other skills. Around them, the normal activity of the movie lot was slowly resuming, but the energy had changed. Word was already spreading about what had just happened on the Western Street set. By evening, everyone in Hollywood would know that Sammy Davis Jr. wasn't just a talented entertainer who could handle Western roles. He was quite possibly the fastest draw in the history of motion pictures. But for Coburn, the lesson went deeper than just recognizing Sammy's skill. He was confronting his own assumptions about what made someone dangerous, what made someone capable. He'd looked at Sammy's entertainment background and assumed it made him less serious, less capable of real mastery. He'd been spectacularly wrong. "You know what the irony is?" Sammy asked, apparently reading Coburn's thoughts. "Everything you said about efficiency and economy of motion, you were absolutely right. That's exactly what real quick draw is about. The difference is, I learned those principles not from gunfighting instructors, but from dance teachers who demanded that every movement serve a purpose. Different path, same destination." Coburn mused. "Exactly. Whether you're hitting a dance step or drawing a gun, the principle is the same. Maximum result with minimum effort, perfect timing, and absolute control." As the two men stood there, the mutual respect between them was palpable. Coburn had learned something valuable about assumptions and prejudice. Sammy had demonstrated that mastery could come from unexpected places and take unexpected forms. "I have to ask," Coburn said, "when you're performing in westerns, in front of cameras, do you actually draw that fast?" Sammy laughed. "God, no. The cameras can't catch it, and it looks fake because it's so fast the audience doesn't believe it. For movies, I slow it down to about 0.4 seconds. Still fast enough to look impressive, slow enough for people to actually see what's happening. So what we just saw, that's just for me, and for anyone who thinks entertainment and real skill can't coexist in the same person." The afternoon sun was beginning to set behind the false building facades, casting long shadows across the dusty street. Coburn realized he'd been standing there for nearly an hour, and his own shooting schedule was waiting. But before he left, he had something to say. "Sammy, I want you to know, that was the most impressive display of skill I've ever witnessed, and I've worked with some of the best in the business." "Thank you, James. That means a lot, coming from you. And I want to apologize again for my assumptions. I looked at what you do on stage and assumed it meant you weren't serious about the technical side of things." Sammy's expression grew thoughtful. "You know, you're not the first person to make that assumption. In fact, you won't be the last. People see the singing, the dancing, the entertainment, and they figure that's all there is. They don't see the hours of practice, the obsessive attention to detail, the constant push to be better. That's their loss. Maybe, but it's also my advantage. When people underestimate you, it gives you opportunities to surprise them." As Coburn walked away from that encounter, he carried with him a lesson that went far beyond gunfighting techniques. He'd learned something about the danger of assumptions, about the complexity of talent, and about the ways that mastery could emerge from unexpected sources. More importantly, he'd witnessed something truly extraordinary. A man at the absolute peak of his physical capabilities, demonstrating a skill that represented the perfect marriage of natural talent and dedicated practice. The story of that afternoon at MGM spread through Hollywood with the speed that only industry gossip could achieve. But it wasn't told as a joke or a curiosity piece. It was told with reverence, with awe, with the understanding that something special had been witnessed. James Coburn, for his part, never again made assumptions about what entertainers were capable of. And whenever the subject of quick draw came up in conversation, he would always say the same thing. "If you want to see the real thing, talk to Sammy Davis Jr. That man can draw faster than physics should allow." Years later, when asked about that day, Sammy would smile and say, "James taught me something important that afternoon." He showed me that respect isn't automatically given. It has to be earned. And sometimes the only way to earn it is to stop talking and start demonstrating. But those who were there that day knew the real story. In 0.19 seconds, Sammy Davis Jr. had taken every assumption about entertainment versus skill and blown them away faster than the human eye could follow.